Introduction. This text aims at developing the concept and practice of joining two fields we usually do not picture together, theology and literature. To help unfold this interaction, two books that compose the trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, have been selected, and through them we will approach the religious phenomenon. The opening chapter presents the chosen methodology, bibliographical research, inspired by the works of Father Antonio Manzato. These texts develop on reflections about the dialogue between theology and literature, basis for a dialogue, and brief overview of theology and literature. The Catholic author is a proponent of the idea that theology can greatly profit from the interaction with literature, an entire field of study which is quite new in terms of academic investigations. It brings forth a variety of possibilities to approach the religious and mystical phenomena, opening up alternative ways to think about the theological. Lastly, I would like to point out the increase in range when it comes to the percentage of population that will be within reach, since approaching religion via new and attractive ways is going to draw the attention of people who have historically been completely out of its scope. To reach our goal, the development of a prolific interaction between two fields of knowledge, 5 segments of them have been picked. 3 of them derive from the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, and 2, from the second volume, The Two Towers. Their spiritual and religious characteristics have been taken into consideration. Then, 5 key expressions inspired on the Christian Catholic terminology were established to assist us in our deliberation of the 5 excerpts, and to aid us consider them appropriately. They are prayer, song of thanksgiving and praise, petition, intercession, and prophecy. The textual fragments will be presented according to their chronological order, since the main characters go on a journey through Middle-earth, beginning in the west and ending in the east. Maps are available in the main body of the text, as well as in the attachments section. In the first chapter, Interpreting Tolkien's Work Through the Magisterium of the Church, the 2 articles by Father Antonio Manzato are going to be studied. Special attention was given to those concepts concerning the exchange involving literature and religion. The author exposes a number of perspectives to guide this conversation, for example, anthropology, comparative studies, and mysticism, among others. Our study will take hold of the mystical viewpoint, therefore, this is going to be the tone leading the conversation between theological and literary. This outlook has been applied throughout this book, since all chosen passages reveal transcendental aspects. In Chapter 1.2, the theological tradition discloses even another face, in the shape of a social religious teaching, also addressed during the opening chapter. It takes form as the principles of the social doctrine of the Church. This document is attributed to Pope John Paul II, and it was first released in 2004. It goes along well with the Gospel's teachings, since it aims at a more benevolent humanity, which would allow us to begin to appreciate the heavenly reality right here on earth. Not only Catholics, but also the overall public will benefit from this text produced by the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace. A link to the official version is available in the bibliographical references section. The goal here is to establish connections relating the beings known in Tolkien's work as hobbits, to fundamental contents ministered by the social doctrine of the Church. Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee, 2 hobbit friends, are the main characters in the present research, therefore they will take the lead along the course of Chapter 1.2. The hobbits will first be viewed holistically as a society. More specifically, we are focusing on the population of the region called the Shire. Afterwards, Sam and Frodo enter the stage, and we have the chance to look at them a bit closer, revealing how aligned with the Church's social teaching they really are. In Chapter 2, Manifestations of Spirituality in The Fellowship of the Ring, we find 3 of the selected 5 fragments. Frodo and Sam make appearances in all of them. During the exposure of the first one, they are protected and blessed by enlightened people. A group of elves was crossing a forested area. A celebration was being held among the trees in a remote part of the Shire. Elven chants of prayer could be heard. The hobbits were enchanted by this mysterious and benevolent group. Indeed, a better moment could not be. In pursuit of our halfling friends there were fierce black riders, from Mordor. Then, we move to the second fragment as they are rescued from a critical situation. By no other than the most prominent inhabitant of the Old Forest, Tom Bombadil. He approached the situation chanting tunes of hope and joy which suddenly turned the tables. Later on, the hobbits would even be welcome at his house, where they met Goldberry, Tom's wife. Before everyone went to bed, Bombadil approached the group of friends and taught them some verses, words of protection, a way to call for aid. It would prove to be most necessary. Next is the third fragment, and we will learn that Sam and Frodo were transporting the One Ring to Rivendell. They meant to leave the golden object there, a safe haven inhabited by elves. However, the four hobbits would even manage to join the Council of Elrond, a gathering of community leaders who came from the different free peoples of Middle-earth and had the common objective of deliberating over the One Ring's destiny. Over that occasion, the human Boromir exposed his prophetic dream and explained it was also shared by his brother Faramir. The mystical dream carried information regarding the warring situation in Middle-earth, and the particular lesson each sibling learned from it would come to define their fates. In the final chapter, Legacy and Intercession in The Two Towers, the fourth fragment will be analyzed. There, we are going to watch Faramir teach the Hobbit duo a short orison to be prayed before meals. Their first encounter was quite turbulent. But, following a stormy initial meeting, the captain of Gondor and the halflings reached a peaceful balance. The human was a powerful individual who led a host of men. From a practical viewpoint, he had in his hands the chance to exploit the situation. But, in the end, he allowed himself to stroll along another path. Faramir managed to examine the circumstances correctly, thus enabling the halflings to depart and meet their inevitable quest. Later, we come to the fifth fragment. We meet the end. The hobbits have reached Mordor. They had been following the pathways through the mountains, north of Minas Morgul, when a sudden realization came to their minds. Their spines went ice-cold. There was no doubt, the place they found themselves in was a lair to some unknown creature, possibly quite dangerous. Gollum had deceived them. Frodo and Sam's only chance of survival would be a miracle. Maybe some support they could not have foreseen. We will see the ring-bearer remember the gift he had received from Galadriel. A very special present, the Starglass. Then, an inspired interaction with this shining object would ignite the manifestation of an unexpected spiritual panorama, drastically altering the circumstances which followed. Thus, different contents from the Lord of the Rings display situations, places, and characters recognizable within the religiousness and tradition of Christianity through the Roman Church. Such a methodological approach finds foundation on three cornerstones. A. The aforementioned writings by Father Antonio Manzato. B. Selected contents from the social religious principles taught by the social doctrine of the Church. C. And chosen subjects found in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, particularly those regarding the human and theological virtues. These bedrocks provide us with a multiplicity of interesting associations relating Tolkien's works, who was a Catholic believer, and the universal scope of the Church. They bring to our appreciation new perspectives involving the use of fantastic literature while respectfully discussing the subject of religion. They, likewise, promote values and concepts acknowledged by the magisterium. I humbly invite anyone who values justice and peace to ride alongside for a while. Chapter 1. Interpreting Tolkien's work through the magisterium of the Church. On his article, Theology and Literature, Grounds for Dialogue, concerning the interaction involving theology and literature, the author Antonio Manzato has presented the mystical viewpoint as one of the available methodologies to be employed in the comprehension of a theological literary exchange. This current text's objective involves the assessment of 5 scenes selected from The Lord of the Rings, appreciated in the light of religion and mysticism. The option for a mystical perspective of faith was made from an array of methods, including anthropology and comparative studies. The designation of 5 elected fragments from The Lord of the Rings is aligned to the option for a mystical outlook. For instance, the 5th passage, Chapter 3.2, can be found in the book The Two Towers. In Chapter 9, The Choices of Master Samwise, the Hobbit makes a crucial decision while being assisted by transcendental inspiration. When found in a terminal situation, he resorted to faith. Chapter 1.1 Theology and Literature. According to the article's writer, literature may represent a tool to comprehend Scripture. Art itself is human. By nature it deals with the ample scope of activities people perform during their daily lives, including those related to spirituality. Since the objective is not doctrinal instruction, it can profit from an exceptional freedom of expression where ideas and narratives can flow, deprived of proselytism. Every human individual brings a particular history which derives from apprehending life experiences in a unique manner. One may put then, that God would also reveal himself in all sorts of manners throughout this eclectic world. Antonio Manzato concludes the text with the following remark. The historical human, where God reveals himself, is also manifested in literature, including fictional writings. Theology has walked for a long while apart from it while acknowledging much about God and human. If literature becomes its companion, the journey will be much simpler. Manzato, 2016, page 17. Thus, literature presents a distinct role within theological thought, particularly the production of a writer such as Tolkien. The English philologist was a Catholic adept and his most famous books eminently transit through walkways where the natural meets the supernatural. Additionally, human and theological virtues are treasured and communicated. Humanity's relation with the notion of evil is exhibited and explored in fertile fashion. Faith, hope, and charity permeate the chosen novels. As a vehicle of communication, the literary appeals to our human core, carrying messages straight through the heart. It is more effective, in terms of transmission and reception, than exclusively religious texts. Both theology and literature occur in history. They bloom in the field of human enterprises. On this same stage are performed God's deeds. Therefore, literary and theological insights come to being from the same source, one that inspires people's hearts and minds. The Creator, through Jesus, God made man, interacts with humanity, taking initiative and reaching for his daughters and sons. In antiquity, Christ operated on earth, having impacted us deeply. Some cultures divide their time in two, before and after him. Nowadays, the Almighty does not walk the world, thus, his historical activity assumes a new aspect. A complex matter, and Fr. Manzato elaborates an edifying sentence about the topic. God communicates with humankind via signs and events which humans are able to appreciate, because they take place in history. The dialogue between God and his people is a mystical one. It happens in history, and we should be able to recognize and understand it. This is exactly the kind of interaction to be discovered while we explore the selected fragments from The Lord of the Rings. For example, the passage studied in Chapter 2.3 details 2 brothers who receive the same prophetic dream. The vision bestowed information transmitted to them from a transcendental origin. Its interpretation reveals, under a poetic appearance, actual historical facts, according to the literary context. The events encouraged by this source redesigned the stream of narrative reality. Therefore, literature refers to different peoples and their many occupations. Everything created and developed by women and men has been portrayed in literary productions. Mankind is the field where authors harvest ideas to put together the situations described in books. This same fertile ground represents the working place of God. He reveals himself in humanity, within the historical human, taking shape in historiographical as well as literary forms. Manzato describes this interaction connecting theology and literature as more fruitful to the first. Poets and writers have always been drinking from the spring of faith, while theologians and scientists of religion have only recently turned their attention to literature in the same manner. In our journey we deal with books that are usually classified as fantasy. They are fictional writings. These kinds of texts can be useful when it comes to comprehending the Christian religion. The author of Theology and Literature, Grounds for Dialogue, elaborates on the perspective. If theology and literature get closer, the dialogue established between them may be more profitable to theology. Literature constitutes a reference which allows for development on the path to know God, based on human knowledge. The historical human, where God reveals himself, is also present in literature, including fictional texts. Art touches human sensibility. It possesses the capability of altering people's emotions, allowing them access to different panoramas. A painting, a statue, a song, or a church might alter our perception of a moment, hopefully, for the better. Artistic production comes from outside and modifies within. Through imagination and perception, the individual creates mental images derived from contemplating a piece of art. This is easily recognized in literature because, according to Antonio Manzato, among the arts, humanity has reserved a special and foremost place for literature. It speaks to human imagination more than to its senses. During a project, the writer aims not only for the reader's intellect but also for their sensitivity. Impacting the latter, our imagination takes flight in spite of our will. A piece of literature displays similar characteristics if compared to a theological text. Both operate in human thought and emotion. However, literature enjoys greater freedom since it does not necessarily carry the load of teaching something. The theological foundation is more dependent on logic. It must instruct while leaving no loose ends. A Catholic document should not allow countless interpretations. On the other hand, literature reveals no concern for didactic or doctrinal traits, allowing a detached creative process, reflected on the authenticity derived from its contemplation. This outcome, triggered by the manufacture of symbolic language through words, can be found in theology. Religious thinking exhibits scientific textual cohesion, and it is modeled after the conceptualizations elaborated on the field throughout many centuries, since the Church Fathers. Differently from literature, though, its keystone resides in ethereal fields, God's abode. Consequently, theology explores more dimensions at the same time. It is essential for the reader to develop a relationship with the Creator. An experience which is, paradoxically, simple and complex. Basic, because it is single-focused on God. Intricate, due to the intangible quality of its object of contemplation, inevitably metaphysical. When it comes to the Lord, literature finds complete freedom. Its intent does not rely on proselytism or academic etiquette, like those that often influence theological thought. This characteristic detachment championed by literature, unlike theology, is described as such by Manzato. Literature has its own way to operate, an autonomous artistic procedure based on a free and disinterested imagination which springs from the artist who brings forth a piece of art willing to reach and touch human sensibility. It all takes place beyond reason itself, awakening us for the contemplation of beauty, prompting fascination. Similarly, the reason for theology is the highest one, source of all beauty. Thus, to better appreciate the essence of things, theologians follow an itinerary analogous to that found in volumes of literature. The task of reporting God's ineffability and His works to humanity becomes easier through metaphorical language. The Bible itself may be considered literature. On its pages we discover narratives, histories and history. For instance, when it comes to the New Testament, the Gospels report, especially, Jesus' public life. Next, in the Act of the Apostles we find described, mainly, the activities of St. Peter and St. Paul. These accounts are filled with characters, sceneries, and controversies, like the drama of life. Chapter 1.2. The Social Doctrine of the Church and the Hobbits. Before moving on to the aforementioned fragments per se, I present here a prelude to the work that will allow a better understanding of the associations to come. Moreover, this is an opportunity to display some principles obtained from the social doctrine of the Church, like the common good, peace, the universal destination of goods, and the preferential option for the poor. Also, we are going to find some significant evangelical ideas, such as the Beatitudes, Matthew 5:1-12, including peace, Matthew 5:9, and the poverty of spirit, Matt 5:3. This is a proposal to deepen the study of selected topics picked from the social doctrine of the Church, by interaction with J.R.R. Tolkien's literary work. The chosen books are part of the trilogy, The Lord of the Rings. Such methodological approach is rather recent in the field of theology. And according to Antonio Manzato, author of the article, Theology and Literature, Grounds for Dialogue, it bears promising fruit. Therefore, besides its appeal with the public interested in spirituality and religious studies, due to innate novelty quality, the method also brings forth relevant and graceful results to the comprehension of religion, now including publics which, initially, would not be accessible. This examination also derives from the inquiry displayed in the previous subchapter about theology and literature. There, the mystical point of view has been depicted as an interpretation key to guide the interaction involving theological and literary. The general intention being contemplation of the religious phenomenon. Here, though, a few traits will transform. The literary remains with Tolkien, the theological, however, shifts to the social doctrine of the Church. This Catholic document remains within the mystical realm since its original source is a supernatural one, the Holy Spirit. Still theological, the compendium of the social doctrine of the Church represents another sort of theological religious tradition, a humanist one. Hence, the characters of The Lord of the Rings step into the spotlight, in this case, hobbits. This population will be studied as a proper society built on sturdy cornerstones, the communities that form its structure and give it meaning. The two hobbits, called Samwise Gamgee and Frodo Baggins, are friends who have been impelled to leave the peace and communal stability of their society in the Shire, and board a dangerous mission which focuses on the welfare of others. The common good of Middle-earth. Both perspectives, communitarian and individual, actually, a duo, a miniature type of social arrangement, make possible an exhibition of this fictional people while relating them to selected elements conveyed by Christian social teachings, especially those published in chapters 4 and 11 of the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church. These chapters approach, respectively, the principles of the social doctrine and the promotion of peace. So, we will embark on a short journey through social papal encyclicals and documents of the clergy. Everything is directed by the social doctrine of the Church, along with our Tolkien books. The Shire. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Matthew 5:9. Most hobbits appreciate countryside lives. Their communities are typically composed of farmers and builders, for they love peace and quiet and good-tilled earth, a well-ordered and well-farmed countryside. One will not find great stone fortifications, for they favor civic and domestic structures. Their woodworkers and stonemasons are skilled craftsmen. Their houses are holes, called hobbit holes, and such structures usually display elongated lines, shortness in height, and beautiful round openings. As we can see here in words and picture, they did not go in for towers. Their houses were usually long, low, and comfortable. A preference for round windows, and even round doors, was the chief remaining peculiarity of hobbit architecture. They value communal self-governing societies where harmony and peace prevail, and their elders become respectable popular leaders. As follows. The Shire at this time had hardly any government. Families for the most part managed their own affairs. Growing food and eating it occupied most of their time. In other matters they were, as a rule, generous and not greedy, but contented and moderate, so that estates, farms, workshops, and small trades tended to remain unchanged for generations. They inhabit a marginal zone of Middle-earth known as the Shire, and do not seek territorial expansions nor plan wars. It is clear that hobbits had, in fact, lived quietly in Middle-earth for many long years before other folk became even aware of them. Favoring the simple stuff of life, especially things that grow, halfling population shows stability, being distributed all throughout the territory. Geographically, the Shire is smooth, marked by rounded hills and little rivers. Residents of the Shire are aligned with the social doctrine of the Church since common good, the pivotal starting point for a community that values an individual's dignity, directs local life. Wealth, land, has been well distributed among the many regional family clans, allowing liberty for all. A nice example of distributive justice where inhabitants have at their disposal the necessary social conditions, in terms of substance and spirit, to develop integrally as fulfilled people. Bearing individual dignity in mind, and aiming towards the common good, possession of property and belongings is open to everyone. Hobbits use the means available with justice, a circumstance that surely took centuries to materialize through the preferential option for the poor. The latter, a social condition which seems to have been extinguished, if ever existed. Therefore, the social purpose of property has been grasped and directed to good use, in accordance with the following extract from the encyclical Letter Caritas in Veritate by Benedict XVI, regarding an integral and human development that includes everyone. The theme of development can be identified with the inclusion in relation of all individuals and peoples within the one community of the human family, built in solidarity on the basis of the fundamental values of justice and peace. Caritas in Veritate, number 54. Peace is the ruling atmosphere in the Shire. At no time had hobbits of any kind been warlike, and they had never fought among themselves. Harmony is the subject of Chapter 11, in Part 2 of the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church. Serenity reigns in hobbit society, derived from its distinctive traits, and prompting effects in consonance with the Holy Scripture. Ease and peace had left this people still curiously tough, though slow to quarrel. This peace produces fruitfulness, Isaiah 48:19, well-being, Isaiah 48:18, prosperity, Isaiah 54:13, absence of fear, Leviticus 26:6, and profound joy, Proverbs 12:20. Thus, peace is much more than the simple absence of war, it represents the fullness of life. Similarly to the other free people's societies throughout the land, the hobbits did have a kind of law enforcement organization, the sheriffs. However, they did not even wear uniforms but for a feathered cap. Actually, their main responsibility was dealing with the fauna. The sheriffs was the name that the hobbits gave to their police, or the nearest equivalent that they possessed. They had, of course, no uniforms, such things being quite unknown, only a feather in their caps, and they were in practice rather haywards than policemen, more concerned with the strayings of beasts than of people. There were in all the Shire only 12 of them. Frodo and Sam. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:3. As mentioned above, two hobbit friends, Samwise Gamgee and Frodo Baggins, decided to leave their homeland, the idyllic Shire, and join the Fellowship of the Ring, title for the first book of the trilogy, The Lord of the Rings. This organization was created with eyes fixed on the common good, destination indicated by the social doctrine of the church compass. The association encompassing the ring was formed to destroy it. Gathering all people of goodwill on Middle-earth, 8 members were chosen to accompany Frodo Baggins on the journey to the very source of wars, Mordor, where peace is completely absent. There stood the Lake of Fire, the site where the One Ring must be thrown to be terminated forever. Among the 9 partners of the Fellowship of the Ring there were 4 hobbits, all of them friends who arrived together, but only Frodo had been invited. The other 3 hobbits managed to join the group, including Samwise Gamgee. Sam was Frodo's buddy, and his landscape gardener. Sam was appointed by the leader of the Company of the Ring, Gandalf, to accompany the ring-bearer. Frodo had inherited the artifact from his uncle, and Gandalf, after intense investigation, uncovered the truth. It was the infamous, and dangerous, Golden Loop. Following the departure of the 9 comrades, tragedy struck twice, the fall of the leader and a betrayal. Therefore, Frodo decided to abandon the caravan and proceed by himself. Sam, though, insisted on following him. The gardener Gamgee brought to life the virtue of fidelity, accepting his position as a loyal servant who dignified himself aiding his friend. Frodo had been entrusted with a responsibility far greater than both, even superior to their beloved Shire, reach peace for all peoples. The hobbits knew that peace and violence cannot dwell together. So, terminating the World War, without any grand confrontation, would benefit everyone globally, facilitating the process of turning Middle-earth into something like the peaceful Shire. Similar circumstances were described by Pope Paul VI in 1967, as following: peace expresses itself only in peace, a peace which is not separate from the demands of justice, but which is fostered by personal sacrifice, clemency, mercy, and love. Both hobbits knew intimately the value of social principles such as the common good, and they inhabited a community where fertile lands mattered. Personal sacrifice represents a distinctive trait when it comes to a preferential option for the poor, in Pope Paul VI's text. Moreover, Frodo and Sam had made the democratic, egalitarian choice, dedicating their lives to people that experienced less fortunate social conditions. They are poor in spirit, the little halflings, like St. John the Baptist, they diminish themselves so Christ's vine may grow in all lands. Going deeper into Samwise's role, we notice his placement as secondary to his friend and boss, Frodo Baggins, whom he liked to call Master. Frodo was quite a character, his uncle being an exceptionally famous individual. Sam illustrated significant virtues, the poverty of spirit, meekness, and courage, acting through the heart. This collection of attributes mirrored a personality capable of charity, free of any charge. One who could love his neighbor as himself. Samwise, then, would be immune to the temptation caused by the ring, because he did not value what the ring could offer. According to the article, Feudal Values, Vassalage, and Fealty in The Lord of the Rings, by the author Colleen Donnelly. She mentions a passage from The Return of the King, third book in the trilogy, which clarifies the gardener's modus operandi. In that hour of trial it was the love of his master that helped most to hold him firm, but also deep down in him lived still unconquered his plain hobbit sense. He knew in the core of his heart that he was not large enough to bear such a burden. The one small garden of a free gardener was all his need and due, not a garden swollen to a realm, his own hands to use, not hands of others to command. And anyway, all these notions are only a trick, he said to himself. The hobbits meet Faramir. Your land must be a realm of peace and content, and there must gardeners be in high honor. The quote above was voiced by Faramir, a human warrior who captured Frodo and Sam when they were nearing their destination. He found out these hobbits carried the One Ring. With a host of warriors at his disposal, he could take the ring for himself. Faramir, however, like Sam, realized where he stood in society, honoring a role as vassal. Son of the local ruler but not the heir, his brother Boromir was the firstborn. After spending some time alongside both halflings, the captain of Gondor reached a consensus with them, allowing their leave while still carrying the Golden Loop. After all, completing their mission was the sole reason they departed the Shire. During the encounter, Faramir would also state his respect for Samwise Gamgee, proclaiming the sentence which opened this final part of the chapter: "Your land must be a realm of peace and content, and there must gardeners be in high honor." So, Faramir seemed to be immune to the lure of the ring, it could not offer anything he valued. The captain of Gondor recognized in Sam the humbleness of someone who used to live in peace, alongside pure-hearted people, poor of spirit. In the first part, concerning the Shire, we saw a democratic population inhabiting its territory according to Christian values. A society rooted in articulated communities based on family and individual dignity. In the second section, we met two friends, Sam and Frodo. Two young hobbits who left their homeland to contribute to the common good. The gardener has proved to be humble, loyal, and benevolent. Such attributes make him a respectable role model for the readers enjoying The Lord of the Rings. Later in the narrative, at the end of all things, in Mordor itself, Samwise realized Frodo was too frail to go on. They were climbing the Mountain of Fire, and Sam could even glimpse the entrance to the summit. But he would not fetch the One Ring, not again, not after having taken it from his buddy when he thought Frodo was dead. Actually, Baggins had only been poisoned by Shelob and recovered later on, but did not take well the fact that Sam had gotten the ring for a while. His mind had been deeply polluted by the One Ring. Hence, when faced with the worst possible scenario, our good gardener still remained righteous. There, at the fiery mountain with Frodo by his feet, he would get the chance to help his buddy fulfill his mission honorably. He was the ring-bearer, however, so feeble he could not continue. Therefore, Sam simply carried Frodo to the Lake of Fire. Chapter 2. Manifestations of Spirituality in The Fellowship of the Ring. During this chapter we will observe excerpts from the first book of the trilogy, The Fellowship of the Ring. The exhibition of these samples will follow the chronological order presented by Tolkien in the novels, allowing for the journey to be appreciated geographically. Some Middle-earth maps are available in the attachments section. According to the terminology presented in the introduction, the passages have been contemplated with the following classifications in mind: prayer, song of thanksgiving and praise, petition, intercession, and prophecy. At least one of these items is associated with each citation. Chapter 2.1 Blessed at the beginning of the journey. Part of the book, The Fellowship of the Ring, this first scene, pages 89 to 90, belongs to the third chapter, 3 is Company, from Fascicle I, and takes place in the Shire. It involves 3 hobbits, Frodo, Sam, and Pippin. There is also a Black Rider from Mordor, and a group of elves led by Gilda. The whole passage goes from page 88 to 97. The halflings got invited to spend the night celebrating in the forest where they encountered the merry crowd. Frodo, Sam, and Pippin, Peregrine took, were on their path to the city of Bree, to meet their friend Gandalf. Unfortunately, along the way, they learned Black Riders were in pursuit. Still an unknown number, looking for the ring Frodo carried on his neck. Suddenly, voices approached singing happily, and disrupting the chase. Below, follows the passage in question. The singing drew nearer. One clear voice rose now above the others. It was singing in the fair elven tongue, of which Frodo knew only a little, and the others knew nothing. Yet the sound blending with the melody seemed to shape itself in their thought into words which they only partly understood. This was the song as Frodo heard it. Snow White, O Lady clear, O Queen beyond the western seas, O light to us that wander here, amid the world of woven trees, Gilthoniel, O Elbereth, clear are thy eyes and bright thy breath, Snow White, we sing to thee, in a far land beyond the sea. O stars that in the sunless year, with shining hand by her were sown, in windy fields now bright and clear, we see your silver blossom blown. O Elbereth, Gilthoniel, we still remember, we who dwell in this far land beneath the trees, thy starlight on the western seas. The song ended. These are high elves. They spoke the name of Elbereth, said Frodo in amazement. Few of that fairest folk are ever seen in the Shire. Not many now remain in Middle-earth, east of the Great Sea. This is indeed a strange chance. The quotation above has been categorized into 2 classifications, prayer and song of thanksgiving and praise. The elven chanting denoted joy, and Gilda, their leader, had his voice sounding above the others. His happiness was well employed, for these elves were leaving Middle-earth and going beyond the Great Sea, eschatological fate of the elven folk. They were abandoning a world which seemed to lack hope of survival. Such was the edge Sauron had obtained during the prelude of the War of the Ring. Both parties celebrated through the night, sharing a banquet at the forest sited in the Eastern Shire. Gilder invited the halflings, once he had learned about the events involving one or two Black Riders. Thus, the whole occasion was a blessing to the little ones, who escaped from the pursuers, got entertained, and fed by benevolent and friendly beings. Gildo recognized Frodo Baggins since he had spotted the hobbit before in the company of his uncle, Bilbo Baggins. The ring-bearer was educated in the elven tongue, and he chatted with Gilder throughout the celebration. When it was over, the young hobbit was told he would now be known as Elf-Friend. According to the elf, Bilbo had taught him well. Here is a scholar in the ancient tongue. Bilbo was a good master. "Hail, Elf-Friend," he said, bowing to Frodo. According to Ph.D. Diego Genu Cloutau, a specialist in Tolkien's literature, this encounter between elves and hobbits was far from ordinary. It was truly a providential benediction that saved the trio from dangerous conflict. And it would not have been a typical skirmish, for they would face, at least, one of the 9 knights responsible for commanding the adversary's forces. In terms of chance, Providence manifests itself on the occasion Frodo and Sam first encounter Gilder, the elf. During this meeting, which keeps the initial threat of the Black Riders at bay, Gilder states there's more than meets the eye under the circumstances of their gathering, and the elven protection for the hobbits. There is no doubt Providence accompanied the hobbits. They abandoned their peaceful homes to engage in the global conflict, ravaging Middle-earth. They were not great warriors. They did not even know how to fight. However, among the inhabitants of all free peoples, they shouldered the toughest mission: carry the One Ring. The very fabric of existence relied on it. The particularities encompassed in the meeting, which involved elves and hobbits, are enough to detach such a situation from the daily domain. It took place exactly where the Black Riders were located. These hunters had been following the ring-bearer, and against such opponents the halflings did not stand a chance. When, suddenly, multiple elves showed up singing praises to Elbereth. A blessed atmosphere favored the surroundings as the chanting mass passed by, and it affected the hobbits too. Triggered by the beautiful song of thanksgiving and praise to Elbereth, the Black Riders movement was disrupted. Later on, Frodo decided to ask Gilder for some additional information regarding the dark foes. "Is it not enough to know that they are servants of the enemy?" answered Gilder. "Flee them. Speak no words to them. They are deadly. Ask no more of me. But my heart forebodes that, ere all is ended, you, Frodo son of Drogo, will know more of these fell things than Gilder Inglorian. May Elbereth protect you." First, Gilder revealed that he feared those adversaries roaming nearby, recommending the hobbits to stay as far as possible. But he also predicted a future encounter involving Frodo and the terrible Dark Knights. Second, the elf asked for a blessing to be cast over Frodo, and in doing so he clearly stated who was the inspiration behind the song of thanksgiving and praise, saying, "May Elbereth protect you." Hence, we can identify in the passage who was the recipient of elven devotion: Elbereth, Githoniel, or Varda. In The Silmarillion, Tolkien wrote about the Lady of the Stars, Queen of the Valar, who embodied the essence of elven piety. Of all the great ones who dwell in this world, the elves hold Varda most in reverence and love. Elbereth, they name her, and they call upon her name out of the shadows of Middle-earth and uplift it in song at the rising of the stars. She is one of the foremost spirits conceived by the sole creator, Eru Ilúvatar, to rule the world. Manwë is her husband, and the one chosen by Eru to be the first king. Now, properly blessed by the elves in the name of Elbereth, the Lady of the Stars, Sam, Frodo and Pippin proceed with their voyage. And the gaze of the stars will remain over them, since Frodo is going to receive the Starglass that will serve as the starting point for a connection between the divine and the mundane, in Chapter 3.2. And next, our second scene will reveal an additional benediction for the hobbits, this time due to Tom Bombadil's presence. He is also going to teach them something of great value. Chapter 2.2. The Hobbits Learn a Prayer. Component of the book, The Fellowship of the Ring, the second passage, page 151, is part of the 7th chapter, In the House of Tom Bombadil, in fascicle I. Composing its scenery there is Bombadil's dwelling, in the Old Forest. This wooded area can be found in central Eriador, in the region of Bree. To escape the Black Riders, the halfling buddies Frodo, Sam, Pippin and Merry enter the Old Forest, adjacent to Buckland. The former three hobbits are joined by Meriadoc Brandybuck, in Buckland. They were still heading towards the city of Bree for their meeting with Gandalf, the wizard. After encountering Gilda and the elves, the trio fled the site, and Black Riders were soon at their heels. They escaped crossing the Brandywine River and arrived in Buckland. There they met Merry, who was in his homeland. Led by Meriadoc, they further evaded their enemies through a tunnel heading to the Old Forest, from Buckland. It was not a simple choice of itinerary, since the Old Forest was avoided by most. Local tales tell of moving trees, and animals growing stronger and more dangerous than usual. And the rumors were true. The hobbits were attacked by the Old Man Willow, a moving tree. During the havoc, Frodo bumped into Tom Bombadil, who helped them and settled the situation, singing during the procedure. Afterwards, Tom took them to his house where the hobbits got some rest. Before sleeping, Tom recommended them a verse, in case they required assistance. He taught them a rhyme to sing, if they should by ill luck fall into any danger or difficulty the next day. Ho! Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo. By water, wood and hill, by the reed and willow. By fire, sun and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. When they had sung this all together after him, he clapped them each on the shoulder with a laugh, and taking candles led them back to their bedroom. This fragment fits two of the classifications, prayer and petition. The scene features the uniqueness of having been explained by Tom Bombadil himself. When he instructed the hobbits regarding the poem, Tom already made clear its purpose. He taught them a rhyme to sing, if they should by ill luck fall into any danger or difficulty the next day. Hence, he illuminated the fact that the poetic prayer was a petition to be used when in need. And the last sentence of the poem further revealed it. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. When set apart from the rest, the phrase portrays similarities with the Catholic short prayers, which may be described as brief requests for whoever is in need. Tom ends the day in singing style, since the teaching of the short prayer was through song. When they had sung this all together after him, he clapped them each on the shoulder with a laugh, and taking candles led them back to their bedroom. And the halflings really found themselves in a pickle yet again, having been faced with lethal peril right on the following day. Tom's house was on the border of the Old Forest, next to the Barrow Downs. A risky path indeed, just like the woods they have recently traversed, but there was a silver lining to such danger. It kept them out of sight, away from nosy folks. The Barrow Downs, though, had been inhabited by Barrow Wights and the four mates were assaulted. Frodo was captured, realizing too late he stood over one of those mounds that are also tombs, page 157. Afterwards, he heard terrifying words being uttered, page 158, felt haunted by them and believed they had turned him into stone, page 158. Gladly, Frodo Baggins did react with bravery and put up a fight against the creatures when suddenly, all at once back into his mind, from which it had disappeared with the first coming of the fog, came the memory of the house down under the hill, and of Tom singing. He remembered the rhyme that Tom had taught them. In a small desperate voice he began, Ho! Tom Bombadil. And with that name his voice seemed to grow strong, it had a full and lively sound, and the dark chamber echoed as if to drum and trumpet. Ho! Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo. By water, wood and hill, by the reed and willow, by fire, sun and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us." Frodo remembered the words Tom had taught them. After vocalizing the first sentence, his spirit was uplifted, transforming his voice, which grew in strength while he continued to recite the poem. Sounds like drum beating and trumpets filled the room. And after a moment of deep silence, a song reached Frodo's ears. It almost seemed to be an answer, slowly expanding. Could his call have been heard? Indeed. It was Tom Bombadil singing, followed by the rolling of stones. A breach had been created, daylight shone within the place. Then, Tom appeared, he was chanting and the sound expelled all sinister beings. He solved the situation in the blink of an eye. His benevolent presence is intolerable for those who walk the shadows. But the darkness is pestering life on Middle-earth, even within range of the brightest lights. In the next passage, we will observe how this reality affected decisively the lives of two brothers. Chapter 2.3 Two Brothers, One Dream. Portion of the book, The Fellowship of the Ring. This third excerpt, page 272, presents Rivendell, an elven haven safely spread along the western cliffs of the Misty Mountains. It sits to the east of Bree, and there the Council of Elrond took place. First and only congregation involving the Fellowship of the Ring, from the second chapter, the Council of Elrond, in Fascicle 2. The Fellowship's gathering was hosted by Elrond Halfelven, Lord of Rivendell. He has invited members native from the free peoples inhabiting the world, dwarfs, elves, humans and hobbits, beside Gandalf, the wizard. Leading the representatives from the human kingdom of Gondor, there was Boromir. He was Denethor's heir, ruler of Minas Tirith, the capital city. Boromir had command over Gondor's armies, being their captain general. His younger brother was Faramir, and both siblings took the lead part during our journey through this passage. Only Boromir was present at the meeting, however, both shared the same dream. Faramir actually experienced it more than once. Below follows the account disclosed by Boromir during the council. I come to ask for counsel and the unraveling of hard words. For on the eve of the sudden assault a dream came to my brother in a troubled sleep, and afterwards a like dream came oft to him again, and once to me. In that dream I thought the eastern sky grew dark and there was a growing thunder, but in the west a pale light lingered, and out of it I heard a voice, remote but clear, crying, "Seek for the sword that was broken. In Imladris it dwells. There shall be counsels taken, stronger than Morgul spells. There shall be shown a token, that doom is near at hand. For Isildur's bane shall waken, and the halfling forth shall stand." The passage reveals itself as a prophecy. It manifested through a dream, filled with unveiled information that traced the outline of a prediction. The oracular dream has been shared by two brothers, Boromir and Faramir, bringing forth valuable insights, concealed in its scenography and words. The darkening eastern sky could be associated with the growing menace embodied by Mordor, that had been gathering strength in shadows. The thunder might have represented the rising tension produced with the first movements of Sauron's war which had just been ignited against the free peoples. However, there was hope. It came from the west, a small, though bright, light. It is at the western end of Middle-earth that the ring resided, under Bilbo Baggins' tutelage. And there the One Ring had remained, and few remembered it. Sadly, Sauron had recently learned the whereabouts of his precious ring. And the Black Riders were sent to Hobbit lands intending to reclaim it. There, Gandalf and Frodo, already aware of Sauron's move against the Shire, developed a plan so Frodo, Sam and Pippin could stealthily leave the Shire and head to the city of Bree. They would move through the Old Forest, then manage to navigate the perilous Barrow Downs area, to covertly enter the town and join Gandalf again at the local inn. Afterwards, the group would head to Rivendell, site of Elrond's council. Sam and Frodo, thus, had started the journey to their final destination, the dark land of Mordor, where the One Ring had to be destroyed, cast into the lake of fire. The west glowed to brighten upon the east. The broken blade symbolized the fragments of Narsil. It was the sword which Isildur, son of Elendil, held to defeat Sauron. The weapon had been used by the father, who was killed, and then by the heir. Isildur attacked Sauron to protect his father's body, managing to cut off the foe's fingers, allowing the ring to fall from the maimed hand. Narsil would be reforged by the elves of Rivendell and renamed Anduril, the Flame of the West. Aragorn would carry it when leading the free peoples against the hosts of Mordor. The sword of Elendil was forged anew by elvish smiths, for Aragorn son of Arathorn was going to war upon the marches of Mordor. Very bright was that sword when it was made whole again, and its edge was hard and keen. And Aragorn gave it a new name and called it Anduril, Flame of the West. Moving along with our reading of the prophetic poem, revealed in dreams to Faramir. Imladris was elvish for Rivendell, the resting place of Elendil's sword. The fragments had become well-kept relics, waiting for the day Aragorn would take the reforged blade into battle versus Mordor, once again. A full assessment of the dream presents us with prolific analytical developments and, probably, the single most relevant question points to the fact that Faramir was able to put the prophecy to good use. The Gospel according to Matthew informs us, the tree is known by its fruit. The good person brings good things out of a good treasure. Matthew 12:33-35. Henceforth, we are going to relate the dream to Faramir only. This choice matches the benevolent spirit prevailing over this book. Moreover, unfortunately, Boromir would be led into temptation and would not be delivered from evil, for he would try to take the ring from Frodo. His brother Faramir, differently, revealed himself to be like Sam, since both could have taken the one ring from Frodo Baggins but neither had tried it. If, on one side, the gardener Gamgee received the mystical approval of Galadriel, Boromir knew her judgment. Sam's virtue was reflected in the way he reported his feelings after Galadriel had meticulously examined the heart of each member belonging to the Fellowship of the Ring, as soon as they had reached Caras Galadon. She seemed to be looking inside me and asking me what I would do if she gave me the chance of flying back home to the Shire to a nice little hole with a bit of garden of my own. It seems like a sincere account, told by someone keen on having his own hobbit hole with a garden to care for. This young halfling did not crave power or glory, and Galadriel undoubtedly noticed it. Otherwise, the eminent Captain General of Gondor, Boromir, was Denethor's heir, and he reported his own telepathic experience with Galadriel quite differently. But almost I should have said that she was tempting us, and offering what she pretended to have the power to give. But what he thought that the lady had offered him Boromir did not tell. And he went on, now turning to Frodo. "Well, have a care," said Boromir. "I do not feel too sure of this elvish lady and her purposes." Aragorn harshly intervened. "Speak no evil of the Lady Galadriel," said Aragorn sternly. "You know not what you say. There is in her and in this land no evil, unless a man brings it hither himself. Then let him beware. But tonight I shall sleep without fear for the first time since I left Rivendell." Furthermore, it was in Rivendell that Faramir's brother, for the first time, revealed his nefarious desire for the One Ring. During the Council of Elrond, Frodo produced the ring before the assembly so they could decide who would carry the burden to Mordor. At that moment, Boromir was the image of discord. Then, Elrond announced the metal band's fate: to walk into peril, to Mordor. We must send the ring to the fire. At that point, Boromir went ballistic. Boromir stirred, and Frodo looked at him. He was fingering his great horn and frowning. At length he spoke. "I do not understand all this," he said. "Why do you speak ever of hiding and destroying? Why should we not think that the great ring has come into our hands to serve us in the very hour of need?" The conclave chose Frodo to continue as ring-bearer, but later Boromir would try to take it from the hobbit. It happened when they were by themselves, the moment Boromir forced himself over the halfling. "I need your ring, that you know now, but I give you my word that I do not desire to keep it. Will you not at least let me make trial of my plan? Lend me the ring." "No, no," cried Frodo. "The council laid it upon me to bear it. It is not yours save by unhappy chance. It might have been mine. It should be mine. Give it to me." Fortunately, when faced with similar chances, Faramir did comprehend the hobbits' quest, allowing them to proceed towards their goal. This encounter would take place during a battle, and the captain of Gondor with a host of soldiers at his disposal, as described in item 3.1. Sadly, his brother Boromir could not resist the One Ring's allure. He wished to employ it against the shadows, the source of power in the ring. However, resisting the One Ring was impossible. Eventually the human would lose control, becoming nothing but a puppet in Sauron's hands. Earlier, Elrond had voiced why they should not use it. "Alas, no," said Elrond. "We cannot use the ruling ring. That we now know too well. It belongs to Sauron and was made by him alone, and is altogether evil. Its strength, Boromir, is too great for anyone to wield at will." So, concerning both sons of Denethor, only the youngest kept his honor. For that, he takes on the leading role in the next excerpt, opening for us the 3rd chapter. Chapter 3. Legacy and Intercession in The Two Towers. This chapter displays 2 more selected segments. Both can be found in the 2nd book of the trilogy, The Two Towers. Our hobbit friends, Sam and Frodo, lead the scene, accompanied by Faramir, a human. Across the first passage, Faramir teaches the halflings a traditional prayer amidst his people, meant to be voiced before meals. A fine example of religious practice. Moreover, the captain of Gondor makes his esteem towards Sam crystal clear. And this admiration is not hyperbolic, because in the last fragment, chapter 3.2, Sam gets acquainted with unfamiliar mystical realities. He becomes a conduit for celestial light, during an impossible battle against evil. Chapter 3.1 A Devotion Before Meals. Part of the book, The Two Towers, our 4th passage, page 320, belongs to the 5th chapter, The Window on the West, in fascicle 4. This narrative takes place in Gondor, amid the Ithilien forests, region ruled by humans and bordering Sauron-controlled lands. These are the people inhabiting the nearest and fighting the hardest in skirmishes against Mordor. Faramir, the main character here, is a captain of Gondor and, as seen before, has the ring within reach of his hands. At that point in the story, Frodo and Sam are guided by Gollum. Smeagol had followed the Fellowship of the Ring and, after the 2 hobbit mates decided to proceed by themselves, he continued to chase the ring-bearer. The double eventually captured Smeagol, only freeing him due to his promise of leading them into Mordor. Later on, when traveling through Ithilien, they were surprised by the arrival of enemy troops. Then, Faramir and his company appeared. A battle raged on. And during the commotion, Gollum stealthily escaped but the hobbits got detained. Both groups were baffled with each other. The halflings were amazed at the height, attire and weaponry, while the humans could not even figure out what the small beings were. They did not resemble orcs or elves. If they were astonished at what they saw, their captors were even more astonished. After having tried to reach a consensus regarding the kind of creature Frodo and Sam could be, peppered by the hobbits' protests who longed to resume their voyage, the leader identified himself. "I am Faramir, captain of Gondor," he said. "But there are no travelers in this land, only the servants of the Dark Tower, or of the White." These 2 towers represent, respectively, Barad-dûr, major fortress of Mordor, and the White Tower of Ithilien, tallest bastion in Minas Tirith, capital of Gondor. Hence, opposing military forces were patrolling those woods in Ithilien, and the hobbits could have been captured by agents of the enemy. Nonetheless, Providence had struck again, and placed Faramir on their way instead, probably the only representative among humans, apart from Aragorn, who would be self-conscious enough to withstand the temptation of possessing the One Ring. According to Clautau, the men who keep their integrity are Aragorn and Faramir. This last made clear to the halflings how virtuous humans could be. I would not take this thing, if it lay by the highway. Not were mine as Tirith falling in ruin, and I alone could save her, so, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory. No, I do not wish for such triumphs, Frodo son of Drogo. A little ahead in the text, the captain of Gondor described the character of his people. They are trustworthy individuals that speak the truth and avoid conceitedness. They are true to their words, keeping them to the end. Faramir was mindful of his inner self. For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. Matthew 12:34. His speech denoted dignity, for he was righteous. According to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the virtue of prudence allows the human being to discern between right and wrong, and what is necessary for its accomplishment. The captain of Gondor was also graced with fortitude, a requirement to keep his honor. Via this virtue he could distinguish the fair choices, crucial to reach an appropriate behavior, particularly when faced with hardships. The captain of Gondor exhibits another excellent quality, a theological one, hope. He chooses to keep inherited traditions alive, the vehicles of faith. This decision, freely made, manifests itself in the action of practicing and transmitting them, including among people of diverse cultures, like Sam and Frodo. It expresses a dynamic and authentic spirituality, made real through words and deeds. And Faramir voices his belief in his ancestors' practices, sharing the following prayer with travelers from the Shire that he just met. Here is the pleasant moment of spiritual communion. Before they ate, Faramir and all his men turned and faced west in a moment of silence. Faramir signed to Frodo and Sam that they should do likewise. So we always do, he said, as they sat down. We look towards Númenor that was, and beyond to Elvenhome that is, and to that which is beyond Elvenhome and will ever be. The fragment atop has been classified as a prayer. The soldiers of Gondor seem to have absorbed this brief religious practice, resulting in assimilation to their daily lives. So we always do. Everyone turned to the west and then, in silence, pictured. First, Númenor, the sunken island, land of humans, that one day stood west of Middle-earth. Second, Elvenhome, or Eldamar, the region of Aman, undying lands, where the elves used to reside, west of Númenor. And third, further westward, Almaren, first dwelling of the Valar in Arda, to the west of Aman, undying lands. Consequently, this concise prayer comprises accurate information regarding the origins of both humans and elves. It also depicts Númenor as a location which ceased to be and is dearly missed by its inhabitants' descendants. The orison exhibits peculiar traits, for it is a silent and contemplative one. The most basic sort of prayer, there is no petition or request here, it simply demands silence and steers our mindset inward. Akin to meditation but still more elementary, it does not need a state of mind to settle in, it brings a new perspective. According to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, one cannot always meditate, but one can always enter into inner prayer, independently of the conditions of health, work, or emotional state. The devotional act of the men of Gondor embodies centuries of intertwined history and spirituality, forming sacred traditions. These represent ways to gather specific contents, considered fundamental to the structure of a society and its succeeding generations. Everything combined, in this case, in a simple and illustrative practice, a prayer. Orison filled with confidence, despite the lament for lost Númenor. Above all, it brings hope in the land that will last forever, which is beyond Elvenhome and will ever be. Freely preserving this devotional practice, a tradition that has become silent prayer, Faramir makes evident his faith, another theological virtue. A saving belief for the captain of Gondor, as Clautau points out. The importance and respect Faramir exhibits towards the West, in a ritual performed before meals, testifies his commitment to the plans of the Valar, and Eru, the One, and made it possible for him to resist the temptations of the One Ring. Faith, and its richness, is only maintained in people who do not disregard it. To preserve piety, a correlating conduct is mandatory, reflected on daily life. Also, the faithful should transmit it to others, irradiating the contents which are affirmed and believed. Faramir incorporated these characteristics, because he tried to keep his religious convictions through practices inserted on his everyday routine, had a virtuous life, searching for the appropriate behavior even when challenged by adversities, and made an effort propagating his beliefs in due time. Hence, it does not surprise us that Boromir's brother was able to deny the One Ring. Likewise, in the next extract, 3.2, Sam relies on faith in Galadriel. He will be able to successfully resist the ring, as Faramir has done. Unfortunately, few on Middle-earth are ready to withstand the menace brought forth by the sheer reality of evil. Below, we can witness the Ithilien Ranger's leader elaborate on the spiritual condition of his own folks, the people of Gondor. While exposing it, he takes the opportunity and reveals who else is aware of the piece of information. "Master Samwise," said Faramir, "I am not learned in elven lore. But there you touch upon another point in which we have changed, declining from Numenor to Middle-earth. For as you may know, if Mithrandir was your companion and you have spoken with Elrond, the Edain, the fathers of the Númenóreans, fought beside the elves in the first wars, and were rewarded by the gift of the kingdom in the midst of the sea, within sight of Elvenhome. But in Middle-earth men and elves became estranged in the days of darkness, by the arts of the enemy, and by the slow changes of time in which each kind walked further down their sundered roads. Men now fear and misdoubt the elves, and yet know little of them. And we of Gondor grow like other men, like the men of Rohan, for even they, who are foes of the Dark Lord, shun the elves and speak of the Golden Wood with dread." At the time Faramir was conversing with the hobbits, particularly Sam, who had asked about the elves. Before answering, the captain of Gondor humbly mentioned the fact that the halflings had been with Gandalf, Mithrandir, and Elrond. So, he announced his uttermost respect and, delicately, stated that what he had to say might be old news for Frodo and Sam. According to Faramir, the Edain, the fathers of the Númenóreans, fought beside the elves, and received the island of Númenor as a token of gratitude. However, the centuries, and Sauron's manipulation, gradually drove the two populations apart. The human explained that women and men have been acting carefully when it came to elves, hardly trusting their words. In fact, they barely knew who they were. Thus, the inhabitants of Gondor and Rohan shun the elves and speak of the Golden Wood with dread. However, Faramir described how trade still existed between humans and Lorien, even though most of the travelers did not return. And he closed the deal nicely, saying the journey was too risky for him but that he admired those who had spoken to Galadriel. Yet there are among us still some who have dealings with the elves when they may, and ever and anon one will go in secret to Lorien, seldom to return. Not I. For I deem it perilous now for mortal man wilfully to seek out the elder people. Yet I envy you that have spoken with the White Lady. Sam Gamgee's reaction, as soon as Faramir mentioned Galadriel, the White Lady, spoke for his feelings. The Lady of Lorien. "Galadriel," cried Sam. "You should see her, indeed you should, sir. I wish I could make a song about her. Beautiful she is, sir. Lovely." Loud and clear the hobbit expressed his respect and affection for the Lady of Light. The halflings did meet her face to face. And it was there, in the Golden Wood, that Frodo received the Starglass, Elbratha's light, fundamental during the battle against Shelob, in the next part. Chapter 3.2. Samwise, the Brave. Element of the book, The Two Towers, the fifth scene, pages 382 to 383, can be found in the 10th chapter, The Choices of Master Samwise, of Fascicle 4. After Faramir had released them in Ithilien, Frodo and Sam continued towards Mordor. Attachment G. With Gollum as guide. Smeagol seemed capable of getting anywhere around Middle-earth. When they were still alongside the ranges of Ithilien, Frodo had been warned of a great danger that had been thriving on the path Smeagol chose to escort them through. Faramir learned about the piece of information while questioning Gollum, and the latter admitted he was going to take the hobbits through the passage of Cirith Ungol, since, according to him, it was the only way into Mordor they would be able to cross. "Do not go to Cirith Ungol," said Faramir. Thus, Frodo questioned him about the threat represented by their route. They were out of options. "Where then shall I go?" said Frodo. "Back to the Black Gate and deliver myself up to the guard? What do you know against this place that makes its name so dreadful?" The captain of Gondor illuminated the hobbit regarding how the Gondorians avoided those surroundings, since older generations had been telling terrifying tales regarding the site. One thing was considered certain: the existence of some sort of entity inhabiting the paths beyond Minas Morgul, Mordor's main bastion, and most would not even talk about it. If Cirith Ungol is named, old men and masters of lore will blanch and fall silent. Lacking alternatives, the friends let themselves be steered by Gollum into one of the most dangerous places throughout the land, the tunnel where the giant spider had spun its webs. Their age long she had dwelt, still she was there, who was there before Sauron. During the crossing of the underground passageway, they were faced with darkened corridors obstructed by webs. So, Frodo unsheathed his sword and gave the Starglass, Galadriel's phial, given to him in Caras Galadon, to Sam, in order that he could shed light on the targets. They began dealing with the obstacles ahead. When he was done with the webbing, exultant with the removal of the traps, Frodo cried, "The pass! Run, run, and we'll be through before anyone can stop us." Then, he sprinted ahead, and the friends got separated. Frodo managed to race hastily, despite his poor physical condition. The One Ring was heavy on his soul, nonetheless the light, which materialized from Lady Galadriel's gift, blinded darkness and granted spiritual courage. When Samwise managed to reach Frodo, he found out his mate had collapsed. And the time had come to face the arachnid. A terrible battle followed, during which his love for Frodo inflated bravery to an implausible intensity. The small and fearless warrior wounded Shelob like never before. No such anguish had Shelob ever known, or dreamed of knowing. Not the doughtiest soldier of old Gondor, nor the most savage orc entrapped, had ever thus endured her, or set blade to her beloved flesh. However, the spider had resisted and returned to destroy him. Not a mere attack, like so many others across the centuries, that was just feeding. No, those little people had been brandishing the starlight and caused unparalleled agony. Time for them to suffer. One had already fallen caught in webs, time to trash the other that hurt her. Even as Sam himself crouched, looking at her, seeing his death in her eyes, a thought came to him, as if some remote voice had spoken, and he fumbled in his breast with his left hand, and found what he sought, the phial of Galadriel. "Galadriel," he said faintly, and then he heard voices far off but clear, the crying of the elves as they walked under the stars in the beloved shadows of the Shire, and the music of the elves as it came through his sleep in the Hall of Fire in the House of Elrond. "Gilthoniel Aelbereth." And then his tongue was loosed and his voice cried in a language which he did not know. "Aelbereth Gilthoniel. O Menel Palandiriel. Lenalan Sai Dien Garuthos. Atiro Nin, Fanuelos." And with that he staggered to his feet and was Samwise the Hobbit, Hamfast's son, again. Samwise was down, facing his extinction in the spider's eyes. Then, in the worst of circumstances, in the most miserable condition, he called, in a whisper, for Galadriel. What happened afterwards would exceed any expectations. Following his inspiration to utter words in the elvish tongue he did not know, the son of Hamfast directed an inflamed taunt towards the opponent, filled with such spirit that activated the crystal again, and the glass blazed suddenly like a white torch in his hand. It flamed like a star that leaping from the firmament sears the dark air with intolerable light. No such terror out of heaven had ever burned in Shelob's face before. The beams of it entered into her wounded head and scored it with unbearable pain, and the dreadful infection of light spread from eye to eye. She fell back beating the air with her forelegs, her sight blasted by inner lightnings, her mind in agony. Beams of light were channeled towards Shelob, piercing her virtually impregnable shell. Celestial rays went through the creature, unimaginable pain. The invincible beast was finally defeated. Not by a renowned captain of Gondar, or a remarkable dwarven mountain prince. No, it was Sam, small, loyal, and inspired that, for the first time ever, forced Shelob to flee in panic. Sam had met Galadriel, and she recognized in him the spirit of the fellowship. In his turn, the gardener witnessed the elf's true nature, having heard her voice deep in his soul when the Fellowship of the Ring visited Caras Galadon, her home. And when Samwise had uttered Galadriel's name, the Lady of Lothlorien answered promptly. It happened through the supernatural sphere. Celestial power was manifested mystically. The event set in motion by an object, the phial of the Lady of Light. Once Sam turned his attention to the flask containing the starglass and spoke the word Galadriel, a connection to the lady was formed. It was a desperate act driven by love, performed because Frodo had collapsed lifelessly on the ground. Packed with courage, and motivated by spontaneous charity, Samwise himself became a conduit for the heavenly charge which had emanated from its stellar source, via the elf, to take shape at Sam's location. A fusion of critical and compassionate necessity. Help Frodo. With the sacred item, Starglass, established a bond. They were combined through the communication channel between Sam and Lady Galadriel. Such manifestation led to the influence of the divine over Middle-earth. The fragment depicted above is divided into two parts. The first half was classified into two categories, prayer and petition. On its turn, the second describes the outcome, the intercession. Recalling these extracts, we saw the gardener Gamgee defy Shelob and fight off her assaults. The arachnid had never faced such opposition. Having been critically wounded, her riposte acquired another tone. It meant obliteration, not eating. Samwise sensed certain death. Suddenly, celestial inspiration struck like lightning and he heard something. A thought came to him, as if some remote voice had spoken. His next action was to search his pocket for the Lady of the Golden Woods flask. After that, he whispered her name. Galadriel. Once again Providence had intervened, since the events involved Elbereth, a Veiler of the highest rank. Somehow her presence seemed to escort the hobbit, probably a blessing emanating from the Starglass. A transcendental manifestation which became apparent after the petition had been made by Sam. His appeal prompted Galadriel's action, who sought help alongside Elbereth. Thus, this mystical context reveals that the gardener only called for assistance after the sublime metaphysical effect had come to being. The hobbit's petition, like Gilda's prayer as song of thanksgiving and praise, chapter 2.1, pointed to Elbereth as source of the spiritual influence. During Frodo and Sam's combat against Shelob, Galadriel interceded for them. Therefore, this passage through the spider's lair acquired new meaning when illuminated by Elbereth as stars. They brought forth Varda's presence. It came from the stars via the Starglass. Her usual name in the Elvish language is Elbereth, the Star Queen. Her given name is Varda and she is the exalted, the lofty. She is the Lady of the Stars. Hence, the Battle of the Hobbits versus Shelob exhibited some interesting characteristics. First, Elbereth's extrasensory presence, the Lady of the Stars, which manifested heavenly power after Galadriel's intercession, the Lady of Light. Second, Sam's struggle, rooted in courage and love, leading to spiritual ecstasy. And, finally, the transformation, or transfiguration, of the Gamgee gardener into a momentary conduit for stellar light. Conclusion. The time has come for us to remember where we started, and what led us here. We have observed the three characters who energized this text ahead, throughout 5 passages which had been explored based on their religious or spiritual features. From the beginning in the Shire, with Frodo and Sam, to the occasion when Faramir met the hobbits on their way to Mordor, and, finally, the battle against Shelob. To make it short, in these 3 personalities we have identified people of virtuous character. Sam was the most examined amid the trio. It began with the exhibition regarding hobbits as a society. Chapter 1.2. Then when he joined Frodo and embarked on what turned out to be their mission. Chapter 2.1. Last, following their meeting with Faramir. Chapter 3.1. The gardener fought the good fight against shadowy powers, and experienced his transfiguration, having become a conduit for heavenly manifestation. Chapter 3.2. Curiously, Frodo has been investigated fewer times than his position as one of the main characters of The Lord of the Rings would lead us to expect. We shall not forget that along the whole tale, the ring-bearer, literally, had the one ring hanging from his neck. Carrying it represented an unbearable load, enough to produce fatal consequences in less resistant peoples. Such was the burden the hobbit Frodo Baggins had endured that when Samwise considered his friend dead and took the jewel from Frodo, the gardener simply fell to the ground, crushed under the weight impacted by the object. One can only imagine how much more challenging the ring was turning their task into. And it was Frodo who suffered this nefarious effect more directly. Amid the human characters, Faramir was brought to light. The captain of Gondor is a righteous individual, having faced the lure of the One Ring at its most potent form. He had a host of men at his command, and he actually considered grabbing the ring. It could help Gondor in its combat against Mordor. But, in the end he came to his senses, choosing wisely. A virtuous person, Faramir had been able to correctly interpret his prophetic dream, and recognized Frodo as the halfling that forth shall stand. Chapters 2.3 and 3.1. Furthermore, the captain of Gondor taught the hobbits a traditional silent prayer, known amongst Gondor's inhabitants. For long generations, the contents of this orison have combined themselves as cultural legacy, recalling their origins in Numenor and the hopeful future further west. Hence, considering what we learned about the personalities of our 3 protagonists, through the Magisterium's lens, several connections have revealed themselves. For instance, the halfling people shaped a unique society based on community and family, and across the centuries they had congregated values like those we find in the social doctrine of the Church, especially the concepts of common good and preferential option for the poor. Chapter 1.2. The hobbits Frodo and Sam consciously abandoned a peaceful life in the Shire after realizing what was at stake, and they did decide, every day, to persist with their task until its fulfillment. We have also got acquainted with virtues taught by the Catechism of the Catholic Church. They were dealt with mainly in chapters 2.3, 3.1, and 3.2, which exposed the valor and grace of Samwise and Faramir. These characters exhibited both human and theological virtues. Through faith and good works they lived what they believed. Tolkien was a Catholic whose works have reached universal range. There are books, movies, games, and an ongoing television series of wide distribution called The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, that was released in 2022, derived from The Lord of the Rings and its appendices. It is an edifying production, in time somewhat lacking such attributes. If we consider the procedure hereby described to establish a dialogue between literature and theology, The Lord of the Rings can certainly be employed in religious teaching and in the new evangelization. I highly recommend the reading of the 2 cited texts by Father Antonio Manzato while developing suitable interpretations grounded in church tradition. Properly conceived, the results should lead to beautiful opportunities of approaching the religious phenomenon, bringing this reality closer to segments of our societies otherwise inaccessible. Everything in a trajectory which does not stray from Christianity, as propagated and taught via Catholicism. Besides the human and theological virtues, as exposed by the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and the orientations regarding our social lives, according to the social doctrine of the Church, we have also contemplated the mystical sphere of religion. This supernatural face of our spiritual tradition has proved recurrent in The Lord of the Rings. It could not have gone differently. After all, what is faith without the mystic aspect? In terms of the relation between literature and theology, one can experience some level of conscience regarding the mysteries of existence while dealing with both kinds of texts. The same concentration and imagination required to connect with a theological writing would also be appreciated when dealing with literature. For instance, a novel which elaborates on beneficial areas of the Christian religion, especially as regarded by Catholicism. Thus, literary works can spark some comprehension about religion, and vice versa. Imagination is relevant during the journey to learn about faith. There's a mystical, or supernatural, side to religion and literature. Contemplation is needed to absorb what this realm has to offer. Imaginative concentration over adequate texts may enlighten an individual's conscience. Pope Francis has revealed the significance of what we have been dealing with. Diego Clautau mentioned the Pope's opinion on the value of creativity. The Bishop of Rome had elaborated on the importance of contemplation and the mystical, as a path to transcendental ascension, where imagination becomes the fundamental key. In the same text, Clautau developed on the concept of supernatural mystery which pervades the search for our cosmic origins, the meaning of human experience, and even creation itself. These are precisely the same topics permeating the Catholic Rosary. Supernatural mysteries. The prayer of the Rosary is a common practice among Catholic believers, and it encompasses a number of mysteries associated to Christianity, including the ones mentioned above, such as our creation, lives, and destinies. This traditional practice invites us to a contemplative mindset of meditative prayer, which may help us to better grasp some comprehension regarding religion and its mystic reality. The Pope, or Pontifex, is the artificer of bridges between heaven and earth, and Francis promoted the applicability of the mystical during our journey towards transcendence. He made clear that we need to carefully consider the theological virtue of faith, source of inspiration and motivation which emerge from the Creator, via a supernatural process. It is sparkled in the heavenly domain, resulting in historical consequences among us down here on earth. And within our literary scope, it affected, as we have seen, the lives of cherished characters who come to life in The Lord of the Rings. Attachment N. Translated transcription from CNBB, 2019. Biblical verses follow in their original biblical forms. See Bibliographical References, page 77. 11. The Rosary. The Rosary prayer is part of the Catholic tradition. Through it we contemplate the mysteries of the life, passion, death, and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. In 2002, the Pope John Paul II added the mysteries of light to this prayer. He also elaborated on the matter. A path of contemplation. 5. But the most important reason for strongly encouraging the practice of the Rosary is that it represents a most effective means of contemplation of the Christian mystery. What is needed is a Christian life distinguished above all in the art of prayer. Inasmuch as contemporary culture, even amid so many indications to the contrary, has witnessed the flowering of a new call for spirituality, due also to the influence of other religions. The Rosary belongs among the finest and most praiseworthy traditions of Christian contemplation. Developed in the West, it is a typically meditative prayer, corresponding in some way to the prayer of the heart or Jesus's prayer, which took root in the soil of the Christian East. Mysteries of the Rosary. A. The Joyful Mysteries, recited Monday and Saturday. The joyful mysteries are characterized by the joy that irradiates from the incarnation event. Meditation of these mysteries allows us to glimpse at the motivation and meaning of Christian happiness. This Marian practice helps us to learn the secret of Christian contentment, reminding us that it is a religion centered on the good news. The Annunciation, the birth of Jesus foretold. Greetings, favored one. The Lord is with you. Luke 1:28. The Visitation, Mary visits her cousin Elizabeth. Why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? Luke 1:43. The Nativity, the birth of Jesus. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. John 1:14. The Presentation, Jesus is presented in the temple. This child is destined for the falling and the rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be opposed. Luke 2:34. The finding in the temple, the boy Jesus in the temple. Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? Luke 2:49. B. The Mysteries of Light, recited Thursday. The mysteries of light refer to Jesus' public life. Each mystery reveals the divine plane embodied in Christ. This Marian devotion helps us meditate on the mysteries of his actions, through the contemplation of his words, like the disciples back then. The Baptism of Jesus. And when Jesus had been baptized, just as he came up from the water, suddenly the heavens were opened to him and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, the Beloved, with whom I am well pleased." Matthew 3:16. The Wedding Feast of Cana. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. John 2:1 and 2. The proclamation of the kingdom, with the call to conversion. The time is fulfilled, and the kingdom of God has come near. Repent, and believe in the good news. Mark 1:15. The Transfiguration. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my Son, my chosen, listen to him." Luke 9:35. The Institution of the Eucharist. Extra. A. During the Last Supper, he explained to his disciples, the bread would substitute his body, and the wine his blood, for a ceremony to be held in his honor. B. Verses. Then he took a loaf of bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Luke 22:19. Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks he gave it to them, and all of them drank from it. He said to them, "This is my blood." Mark 14:23 and 24. Original verse from CNBB. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. John 13:1. The Sorrowful Mysteries, recited Tuesday and Friday. The sorrowful mysteries refer to the passion and death of Jesus. This Marian practice facilitates the remembrance of his passing, promoting the comprehension of this action which established a way for heaven and earth to mingle. The Agony in the Garden, Jesus prays in the Gethsemane after the Last Supper. Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Mark 14:38. The Scourging at the Pillar. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. John 19:1. The crowning with thorns, the soldiers mocked Jesus. And they clothed him in a purple cloak, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on him. And they began saluting him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Mark 15:17 and 18. The carrying of the cross and self-denial. Then Jesus told his disciples, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." Matthew 16:24. Extra, the next verse may improve our comprehension. "For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." Matthew 16:25. The crucifixion, the death of Jesus. "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Luke 23:46. The glorious mysteries, recited Wednesday and Sunday. Our contemplation regarding Christ's life must move beyond the crucified. He is resurrected. The glorious mysteries begin with the great mystery of Jesus' resurrection, inviting us to share his hope on eternal existence while we walk this earth. It provides our lives with meaning and joy, which are gladly communicated to others. The resurrection. "Do not be afraid, I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised, as he said." Matthew 28:5 and 6. The Ascension. "While he was blessing them, he withdrew from them and was carried up into heaven." Luke 24:51. The descent of the Holy Spirit. "All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages." Acts 2:4. The Assumption of Mary to heaven. "For the Mighty One has done great things for me." Luke 1:49. The coronation of Mary, Queen of heaven and earth. "A great portent appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. Revelations 12:1. Fabio Valezquez is a historian from Universidad de São Paulo, with a minor in archaeology. He is also a teacher who graduated from the Department of Pedagogy at Universidad de São Paulo. A postgraduate specialist in theology and religious teaching educated at Pontificia Universidad Católica de São Paulo. Earlier in life Fabio got acquainted with languages and acting. Religion on Middle-earth, Tradition and Spirituality in The Lord of the Rings aims mainly at the mystical aspect of religion, and it also glances at the social angle. Both perspectives are seen through the scope of the tradition of the Catholic Church, a vast 2,000-year-old source of knowledge, at which we will glimpse. A variety of pictures are exhibited throughout the book.